Hey, I'm Joe Grisella.
Wait a minute. I'm Joe Grisella.
Oh, hey, Dad. Yeah, there's two of us. Feel bad for Jared.
I'm thanking you for listening to the Hey Chaplain podcast, and I'm very appreciative that I'm here today. And I just want to tell you, a shout out to all of you that help support Jared in his endeavor. Buy him a cup of coffee.
Welcome to Hey Chaplain. My name is Jared Altick, and I'm a chaplain with the police department. The Hey Chaplain podcast is a series of conversations, mostly with police officers who say, "Hey Chaplain, I've got a story to tell and some hard-earned wisdom to share." The guests on Hey Chaplain come from across the world, from the LAPD to Scotland Yard, from Seattle to South Africa. They are sharing their wisdom so that you don't have to learn the hard way. And as a patrol chaplain, I think you deserve something positive and encouraging. Now, this podcast is specifically directed at police officers, but it is applicable to almost anybody. And the growth of a podcast depends on word of mouth. So if you're a regular listener, would you take a moment and copy the link to this show and send it to someone who might like to or maybe need to hear something positive and helpful? You guys are the reasons that we have listeners in all 50 states and over 130 countries. But I routinely run into cops, even in my own hometown of Kansas City, that have never heard of the show. In the first part of our conversation with Travis Yates, we talked about cowardly leadership. If you didn't listen to that episode, you need to go back and listen to it right now. It's episode 131. This is the second part of that conversation where we veered off from the cowardly leadership conversation to a more specific talk about how leadership affects officer safety. And this is something that Travis is really passionate about. I mean, he really gets fired up here. This really isn't a space for political correctness. We're just kind of telling it like it is. And I have these conversations with cops all the time. It's just not usually with a cop who has a doctorate in this stuff. Here's Travis Yates. One of the big issues that leaders can affect, because they affect budget, they affect purchasing decisions, there's all kinds of ways in which they influence this. How can a leader make officers safer in the dangerous work that they do?
Well, when it comes to officer safety, there's really nothing new under the sun. We know what safety is. We know what tactics are. Very little has changed. Case law hasn't changed on that in decades, right? But what we've seen is a profession succumb or leaders succumb to emotion, right? To maybe a national narrative on what should make us safe or what should make the community safe. And we've sometimes abandoned those tried and true safety measures. And so I think that's not easy for especially somebody higher in the ranks to be able to fight that off. But the community needs to understand, the community needs to know what it takes to actually be safe. And that's not grabbing every program out there and we're going to change our policy to this. I mean, we still see this, but I mean, several years ago, the new thing was, well, in our use of force policy, we're going to put that we have sanctity of life. Okay, yeah, of course we do. Sometimes we're the only ones that have sanctity of life, but there was this belief that this would just make use of force go down. This would help out. And now we've got the mandatory de-escalation, and then we got the language of you only use force as a last resort. All these fancy language things. By the way, none of it's worked. Forces remain relatively the same. Officer assaults have been increasing since 2020. Last year was an all-time high. And so we have to get back to the basics of what tactics are and what safety is. And to do that, obviously it's training, but it's the right training. And I fear that sometimes we're doing training that just checks a box or makes some activist happy, right? I can name off a bunch of it right now. De-escalation is a prime example. That's nothing new under the sun. We've known how to de-escalate for decades, right? I mean, go all the way back to verbal judo and before. And but then somebody repackages it, right? Maybe at a conference and they repackage it, and maybe the federal government throws a grant out there and we call it something else, and we're all doing it now. But the problem is you can go too far. Some of those de-escalation tactics are great if somebody's not a threat to somebody, but it's hard to de-escalate a violent criminal.
Yeah.
So what we're seeing is a complete abandonment of what we know is safe for us And the pendulum has swung way too far. And it's really incumbent upon leaders to have a healthy balance about that.
Be clear about what you mean by the wrong direction. Are they succumbing to kind of pandering to people's sensitivities? Is it that they're too caught up in the latest, greatest gadgets and trends? Or like they're following fads? What specify what you mean by?
Well, it's a little bit of everything, right?
Okay.
Let's say there's a high profile use of force 2,000 miles from you. But all of a sudden, you've got the 3 local activists that always go to city council meeting. They're showing up and they're outraged because whatever happened 2,000 miles away, they think it's going to happen here. And you're only going to be able to avoid this if you start training your officers in this active listening 101, whatever program I've figured out. And you better certify everybody in this. And so to appease the noise, the department just goes and does it. Well, the problem is when you give in to a bully, they just keep asking, right?
Yep.
Instead of educating the bully. Well, that's fine and dandy, but this is actually what we do. And we're not sure this doesn't work. I mean, there's a guy making more money than I care to talk about that's a PhD that is teaching a class called, I'm not going to name the class, but it's called something dialogue.
Okay.
And he did some peer-reviewed study in like Australia and found out that in Australia, this helps out with riot control. And this is what he does. He found out that it's a good idea that before there's a protest for the police department to speak to the protest organizers. Well, here's the shocker. We've been doing that for 40 years. That's nothing new. But see, they repackage it, and then all these large departments they're saying they're doing this, and then they're telling the community this is going to help. The problem is when it doesn't help, what are they going to answer to? None of this stuff really helps. Nobody seems to want to go back and track stuff. So when you say I call it flavor of the month, right? But you name it. Whether it's there's more programs than I care to talk about, but so it's easy for these leaders to just grab onto it and say, this is how we're solving it. When the fact is they know how to solve it. They know how to do it, but it's very hard to talk about that because, there's lots of money behind these programs. National organizations get behind these programs. The media talks about these programs. And so we're throwing everything at these officers. I mean, policy's changing and the training's changing. I mean, I went through probably 6 different active shooter protocols in my career. Now, maybe they were improving on each other, but we're not seeing things improve on each other today. We're seeing things that are just taking more tools away from officers, making them less safe. And I can prove it in the data. The assault rate has been increasing every year since 2020. Last year was a record high. And people go, oh, but Travis, the line of duty death rate's about the same. That's not how you attribute safety, because we save a lot of people's lives in ERs today. But you have to look at the assault rate. Right. And our assault rate's never been higher, and nobody seems to be talking about that. And so I believe
people are being murdered because medical technology is
100%. Yeah,
not because our verbal de-escalation techniques.
Yeah, if you take the medical technology from the 70s applying today, the murder rate's 4x. 30s is 10x. And so we're saving more people's lives. So the assault rate is really the answer here. And nobody seems to be talking about that or even seems to care about that. So leaders need to have a healthy balance on, yes, we need to think outside the box sometimes, but you don't always think outside the box. Sometimes you have to get back to what you know is safe. And there are things we know is safe. The problem is use of force is never pretty, and we try to make people think it is. I don't know who thought it was a great idea to put our body cameras on the primetime news and make people think it looks great. But no, there's a reason why they don't have body cameras in ERs, right? Or surgeons don't have body cameras because we wouldn't understand what we're looking at. Well, most of the public doesn't understand what we're looking at either. And so I think leaders have to have a healthy balance, educate people. I mean, I can give you a prime example. I'm never going to be a chief because you've heard me talk already, Jared. But if I was a chief, I would immediately tell the public, listen, if an officer gives you command, you need to follow the command. And the reason is it's very dangerous for you not to follow that command, because I'm going to tell my officers, the people that don't follow commands, you need to be very cautious of why they're not following commands. And it's just not good. If you want to argue in court, call IA, talk to a lawyer, call me, but do not resist officers in the streets, because I'm going to tell my officers to win every single time. And you're not going to like that. That's perfectly legal within case law. People don't get to do that, but people have been made to think the opposite. And then officers are made to think that they can't do anything about it. And we're really in a dangerous time because of it. I don't think anybody listening is going to argue with me, because if they're working the streets right now, you know exactly what I'm saying is true. We're not worried about getting killed in the line of duty, Jared. We're worried about what our boss is going to say about the use of force that we have to use to save our lives. We're more worried about what's happening in our walls than outside our walls. And so I think leaders need to, I'll give you Sheriff Mark Lamb as a prime example. He would set people down on day one hired, and he would tell them this: you do whatever it takes to go home. I got the rest. And they did. And obviously they got to follow policy. They got to follow the law. We all know that. But officers don't think that today. They don't think they could do whatever it takes to go home. And that's a huge problem. So leaders need to make sure that that's well known.
So the enemy of officer safety is the threat of bad PR?
It's a threat of what looks bad.
Yes.
They're more scared of YouTube than going home at night.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're scared of how the command staff will respond if they end up on YouTube.
Let me tell you how ludicrous this is, Jared. I'm involved in a certification right now, and everybody listening to this has heard of pre-attack indicators, behavioral threat assessments. You know, everybody talking to somebody on the streets as a cop knows that if you're talking to them and their hands keep going in their pockets, they start looking around, or they get happy feet. Everyone knows what that means, that something's about to happen, right? And the human brain is a pretty fantastic organism because the body acts before the decisions are made. And so we train cops, or we used to a lot, on what these indicators were. We'd say things like, hey, if they start doing this, just put them in handcuffs real quick, figure it out, you know, or get some distance or call some backup. We're not actually telling them that anymore. We're telling them to just talk to them real nice, like you're at Burger King or whatever. But here's how much this profession is not taking care of officers. Do you know that if you're a paramedic, or you're a doctor, or you're a clinician, or you're a corrections officer, they have a system of those behaviors, exactly what to do, when they see them, what to do, and it's been peer reviewed? Doesn't exist for law enforcement. And so we're rolling that out in 2026 because I think that's the big problem. And hopefully that gives leaders something to grab onto. Leaders are getting a lot of bad ideas that are grabbing onto. So let's give them some good ideas. And it's all going to be researched out and validated. And because we're almost telling officers and pushing things that are the opposite of safety, right? Listen, I'm all about de-escalation, but de-escalation was never developed for violent people. It was developed for the person having kind of a mental health crisis, or they're really upset. But if somebody is displaying acts of violence, or somebody has weapons, that's not what de-escalation is for. And we've just sort of lost that balance, and nobody seems to be looking at the ramifications of that.
Something I've appreciated where I'm at is that even though we're in a major city and the local government here and the surrounding cities around us all have pretty liberal, and I don't hate to use the word liberal, but just non-friendly dispositions toward law enforcement. However, our agency for years and years and years and years, our patrol officers have carried a wooden baton that is like a slightly shorter baseball bat. I mean, it is really noticeable, really big. And they're often just hanging in a loop off the hip of the officer, but it is an intimidating baton. I don't know another agency.
Well, I was just having this conversation this morning because I was watching a video from a guy who was wanting me to look at a video, see what I thought, and he had a photograph of an officer with a baton, and I go, does anybody even carry batons anymore? I carried one. We call them PR-24s. I carried
and not everybody does, because some people prefer the collapsible asp.
Until you use it once and they don't work.
These batons, I tell you, I don't know if I've ever seen one used. I know they have been, but I don't think I've seen one used because the presence of it is intimidating. Yeah. And I talk about de-escalation. There's not been a de-escalation class that is more effective than walking up to a belligerent party, basically carrying a baseball bat. I mean, it's not quite the same length, but it's about the same diameter. And it is like, whoa, please don't hit me with that. So, I don't know. It's politically incorrect. And it's amazing to me that in our city, a thing like that can even exist. But I'm glad. Well,
that's because
I think it saved lives. Yeah.
It's like if you hang something on a police wall, it's never coming down. We believe in that tradition, right? So
that's right.
at least that one's stuck around.
That's right. Okay, so Travis, we were talking earlier about trying to question leadership. If leadership is saying something you don't think is right, how do you respond to that in a way that can be heard? How do you stand up for what you know is true and is true to your convictions? What's your take on that?
and, you don't want to be a jerk about it, but it's just the truth. I'm in a meeting and the chief's announcing that he's getting rid of LVNR, which is, founded right there in Kansas City, because it's deadly force. Well, it's not deadly force. Everybody watches UFC on the weekends knows it's not deadly force. And there's jiu-jitsu gyms doing it right now. We're not running to man down calls. I mean, we all know it's not.
Clarify what that is.
Lateral vascular neck restraint. Sort of the adage terminology is we choked him out. It's not a choke.
Which is not what that is.
No, it's not what that is. But yeah, it's you'll see that's how UFC, jiu-jitsu, all that, right? It puts them to sleep for a few seconds. But obviously, not deadly force. Definition of deadly force is anything that's have a high risk of serious injury or death. They can't name one person that's died from it, period. Full stop. But because George Floyd did not die from an LVNR, we all decided to ban it, right? And so he's in there giving us his talk, and I said, well, it's not deadly force. Meanwhile, everyone else is silent. Everyone. And his answer to me was, you're right, it's not deadly force. Which I was like, then why are we making it deadly force? Because the bad guys don't have this policy. Only we do. But, you may not be in that position, but I think you can take that story and apply it to a lot of things, right? Why are we doing it this way? You need to be the one that questions things in a professional way. That's when you're down that right path. But I got to tell you, it is daily. It's like reading the Bible. It's got to be a daily grind because you won't always feel courageous, Jared.
Yeah.
But you have to daily think about it and daily walk down that path.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of situations where you should speak up, you should push back, you should be the truth teller, but you just don't feel brave enough to do it. Maybe because you've been taught that anyone who sticks their neck out gets slapped down. Which takes us all the way back to the original leadership conversation about having courageous leaders who are willing to do the right thing, even when it's not comfortable, even when it's not good for them personally. They do the right thing because it's the right thing. That kind of leadership pays off long term. It doesn't often pay off short term, but it's about doing what's right overall and not just taking the easy way out. Travis, I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much.
Yes, sir.
I want to express my gratitude again for Travis Yates being on the show. He's a busy guy, and I just kept going after him and asking, when do you think we can set a time? And he was so gracious about me pestering him like that. And when we finally got together, we had a wonderful time. There was so much of the conversation I wish we had recorded more of it, even before the interview. We just had a great time chatting. Again, he told us in the previous interview that you can find him on LinkedIn and at travisyates.org. On the next episode of Hey Chaplain.
We had another lady that she had 72 law enforcement contacts in a 5-day period with 7 different agencies. She didn't get the answer she wanted at Clay County. She went to Platte County. She didn't get the answer she wanted at Platte County. She went to Smithville. She didn't get the answer she wanted there. She'd come to Kansas City.
Just making the tour around the metro.
I think at one point she even called the FAA, and I'm not real sure on that. Why on that one? But clearly the lady was in psychosis, and she believed her children were in danger.
Hey Chaplain is a free resource for everyone because of those supporters who are quietly helping behind the scenes. If you want to help this show reach more cops, chaplains, and other first responders around the world, please follow the link in the episode description to support the show. The views expressed here are the personal views of the hosts and our guests and do not necessarily represent the views of any law enforcement agency or its components. If you like this episode, please share it with a cop or someone who loves a cop. Thank you for listening to Hey Chaplain. And as always, let's pray for peace in our city. That's like gold in podcasting. I so appreciate it. But is there anywhere where I interrupted you and you felt like you had to go back and...
No, I think I was probably interrupting you and talking over you most times. So I got pretty much everything in I wanted to get in.
Well, you did a great job. I think I've got plenty for 2 episodes, and that makes me happy. And so this is good.